where to start with the Cthulhu mythos. The number one story I recommend is The Shadow over Innsmouth. It has a good balance of mystery, action, and horror. Even though he was a pulp author, Lovecraft rarely did action-based stories. It's got cultists and monsters, has a very good pace and build, and is not overly complex or convoluted, making it one of the easiest stories to start with to introduce yourself to the Cthulhu mythos. Number two, of course, has to be The Call of Cthulhu. You gotta jump into Lovecraft's world of cosmic horror with this one. Lovecraft only wrote 2 stories featuring Cthulhu, the other being At the Mountains of Madness. A lot of people will say start your journey into the Cthulhu mythos with At the Mountains of Madness, but don't. It is a great story and details Cthulhu's early adventures on planet Earth, but it is overly long and could have been edited down better. But Lovecraft was getting paid by the word, so. It is also a very slow build, so it can really bog down first-time readers of Lovecraft and turn them off from his work. It reads very much like a National Geographic documentary, covering an expedition to Antarctica and the history of some of the alien races that have visited Earth hundreds of millions of years ago. So At the Mountains of Madness is not a good place to start. Just go with The Call of Cthulhu. It's the story where most of the memes originate anyway. Next, I'm going to suggest 2 stories, Pickman's Model and The Statement of Randolph Carter. They're quick reads, and you can get a good sense of Lovecraft's style of writing. By the time you're finished with these first 4 stories, you'll have a good basis to decide if you like Lovecraft's work and want to continue reading more of the Cthulhu mythos. Number 4, I will recommend 2 more. The Cats of Ulthar and The Doom That Came to Sarnath. As Lovecraft's career progressed, he began writing more in the fantasy horror genre. Most of those such stories took place in the Dreamlands, a vast alternate dimension that can only be entered via dreams. These 2 stories will give you a good entrance to Lovecraft's Dreamland works, and you gotta be hip to the Cats of Ulthar. Lastly, I'm going to suggest The Dreams in the Witch House. A lot of Lovecraft stories deal with traditional horror and supernatural tropes, but then explain them through the lens of science, such as Reanimator or The Color Out of Space. But The Dreams in the Witch House is one of my favorites and perfectly blends folklore, monster horror, and the dark gods with quantum physics and what was then cutting-edge science. Lovecraft proved to be ahead of his time with his story of piercing the barrier between dimensions, which is now an accepted part of superstring and multi-worlds theories. Now, as for Lovecraftian films, there are not many very loyal adaptations of his work, and those tend not to be very good anyway. So the number one film that I recommend that has the greatest feel of Lovecraft's work is John Carpenter's In the Mouth of Madness. You've got evil cultists, violence in the streets caused by otherworldly madness, a creepy old town, dark gods, monsters, and body horror, and captures the weirdness and unease of Lovecraft's writing style, especially with the main protagonist's descent into madness and the film's grim ending. Second, I will recommend From Beyond. Even though Lovecraft's short story makes up the entire opening scene, Stuart Gordon did a great job expanding on the original ideas presented. This is pure cosmic horror at its finest. Lastly, I will recommend a film that most people have not seen and probably will not include in such a list. It is from Spain and is only available with English subtitles, but it has the best cult scene I have ever seen on film. Its US title is Witching and Bitching. It is billed as a horror comedy, and the plot is copied directly from Robert Rodriguez's From Dusk Till Dawn. It starts out as a heist movie, then turns into a horror movie when the criminals arrive in a town inhabited by all witches. They end up at a big mansion where the rest of the film takes place with all kinds of craziness happening. It definitely has a very European feel where the film almost degenerates into mindless slapstick but manages to maintain enough control on the story so as not to become cringy. And the last 10 minutes of the film is the best cult scene I was talking about. I was totally surprised by the ending. I in no way saw it coming, and it is a totally what the fuck ending that made me really appreciate the film so much more. And there you have it. the best places to start your journey into the Cthulhu mythos.